Who's up? Who's down?
Ted, my up for this week is Rick Cordella of NBC. It was a great Kentucky Derby that they put on. They had a photo finish. More importantly, they locked up a jewel horse racing event for another couple of years. That deal wasn't going to expire until 2025, but now they're locked up for a number of years into the future. The increase in ratings, it was just a really good weekend for NBC. I'm curious now to see if they similarly are able to lock up the Preakness, which also runs through 2025. That event, I think, has lost a little bit of luster. You've seen some horses and some trainers skip that second leg of the Triple Crown, maybe go straight to Belmont. It's still one of the marquee events on the sports calendar. But overall, NBC, Rick Cordella, my upper this week. Who do you have, Ted?
I'm going to go with someone that maybe a lot of the people, even who work in sports media, didn't know until a few days ago, and that's Melinda Adams, a producer at ESPN, who was unwittingly thrust into the spotlight because of an exchange that she had with Milwaukee Bucks player Patrick Beverley after the Bucks were eliminated from the playoffs. And the quick backstory here, Beverley had thrown a basketball not once but twice into the crowd during the elimination game. And she was in the locker room afterward asking to speak to him around a circle of reporters. And Beverley said, do you subscribe to my podcast? To which she very politely said, no, I don't. And he politely said that she then had to leave the circle of people interviewing her, said, you're not allowed to talk to me if you're not subscribed to my podcast. That unleashed a torrent of praise for Melinda Adams from around the sports media world. I just want to read a couple of these things. This is how I think everybody wishes their colleagues thought of them. Extremely professional, respectful, and considerate. Most respected and professional person we have at ESPN. An ESPN legend, one of the great people in the business, a beautiful soul, stellar, unquestionably among the nicest people in the whole world. You are beloved, one of my favorite people in life, one of the best humans around. Austin, you get the idea. I could go on and on here. Okay, so Melinda Adams, she is my up because she is being recognized after 40 years in the business, most of them lately at ESPN. She's also been at CBS News. She was also a local in North Carolina at WRAL. Everybody should get this kind of recognition at some point in their career from their colleagues in a very public manner. It shouldn't have to come in a moment where an athlete you're covering, you're just doing your job, is trying to essentially embarrass you. But it is good that she is finally getting the recognition she deserves, not just for being a terrific producer, but a terrific person. So kudos to Melinda Adams.
Yeah, unfortunately, it had to happen in this sort of situation. She handled it incredibly well in the moment. She was very professional. I agree. Glad she's getting all that sort of love. Ted, who's your down for this week?
Well, Austin, if I gave you one guess, you would probably figure out who it is.
I think I know where this is going.
It is Patrick Beverley. Congrats, Pat Bev. So if you're on the other side of this dynamic, from the person who is stellar and a beautiful soul and one of the best humans around, unfortunately, Pat Bev caught a few criticisms of his behavior. A couple of the tamer responses were, that excuse for a man, bless his heart. That's from an ESPN SportsCenter anchor. And need I remind you, Austin, that Patrick Beverley has been a regular on ESPN a couple of off seasons ago. He was part of their regular postseason coverage, where he quickly kind of made a name for himself by doing a lot of the things that people are now criticizing him for, which is to say being opinionated, being outspoken, being somewhat original. ESPN refuted a report that said that he was banned from appearing on their network going forward. They said that was never true. It is not true. So I guess we can expect to see Patrick Beverley at some point when temperatures cool. And we know very well that there's a long history of former athletes finding a home for themselves in the media, even if they were at one time a very controversial figure. There's no better example of that than maybe the most popular former athlete in television, which is Charles Barkley. There was a time where he was controversial, where he was opinionated, where people sort of grew tired of him, and now he's everybody's favorite television commentator. He's funny. He can get away with saying whatever he wants. Maybe Patrick Beverley will get there one day. The important difference is Charles Barkley is a Hall of Famer. Patrick Beverley averages 8 points a game for his career, has never won a championship, has never played in the finals, has never been the first, second, or third most important player on his team. He's mostly known for times where he causes controversy. So he's going to find that when he goes out in the marketplace looking for post-NBA media opportunities, if that is in fact what he wants, he can do a podcast like he's doing with Barstool Sports. He can do his own podcast if he wants to. He can do his own videos if he wants to. But if he wants to get into the major network space, and we know that the NBA is working on their media rights, there's a long line of people who can be just as opinionated, just as interesting, and have much more colorful careers and have not spent a good portion of their careers sabotaging themselves the way Patrick Beverley has. So this is a down, not so much that will come into play this year, with Patrick Beverley as much as it might in future years as he goes into the back end of his professional basketball days.
Ted, I'm a pretty avid podcast listener, and I had no idea that he even had a podcast either. So I'm sure I wouldn't have been in his little circle of trust there in the locker room either.
Now, I just want to say, in fairness to Patrick Beverley, apparently he'd been doing this to people for quite some time. You can't interview me unless you subscribe to my podcast. Now, putting aside the ridiculousness of that, Melinda Adams is not the first person who was given that edict. It just came at a moment where there were more eyeballs on the situation, and that makes him look even worse and even smaller, and makes her look even better by comparison.
Yeah, and like you alluded to, there was a false report out there that he was banned from ESPN Airways. Really doesn't seem like something that's going to be going on under the Jimmy Pitaro regime. He has not been on ESPN Airwaves in a while, but that was a decision made a long time ago, having nothing to do with this incident. But yeah, I agree with you. As he gets closer to retirement, he's not really endearing himself to network executives that may want to bring him on. Ted, my down this week is the WNBA because it seems like there just wasn't the anticipation by the league and by the Chicago Sky and by the Minnesota Lynx to have this game available, this preseason game, with two incredibly popular stars. The league doesn't revolve around Caitlin Clark, who's going to be popular, and that's going to be on national airwaves. And our preseason games, there was a lot made of that. But to not anticipate that games involving Angel Reese and Camila Cardozo are going to be popular among fans, why that wasn't, on some sort of national platform and you had to rely on fans streaming it through their phone. When that's the news that you're making, that's not a good look for the NBA. I'm glad it happened in the preseason. I'm glad it happened now. I'm sure they're going to make corrections, and I'm sure they're really realizing what an incredible opportunity they have with these new popular players coming into the league.
And this is a good problem for the WNBA to have, right? It's a problem that they've probably wanted for a long time, and it's a problem that they deserve to have, which is people want your product all the time. You have to be ready to serve that product all the time. And they're getting a taste of that now in the preseason and at the early stages of the careers of players like Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, so that by the time those players are in the regular season this year, certainly when they're in their prime of their careers, a lot of these bugs will have been worked out and they'll be able to deliver the fans the product that they're clamoring for clearly. So a good opportunity for the WNBA can come out of this.
Well, I'm sure that the WNBA league office is having plenty of discussions around this, and they will be up and ready for the start of the season.